Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first. In their covered wagons, they find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. I have a guest, Paul Snow, the CEO and founder of Factom. Factom. Paul runs a local meetup here in Austin, Texas that I attend. I've been there dozens of times. Extremely knowledgeable in the crypto world, as are all the Factom people. And he's been a guest before, and he's going to be speaking at the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Superconference coming just in a few days, February 16th to the 18th in Dallas. So, Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Richard. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming again. I appreciate it.
I bet you're a bit busy. I've done these conferences before. There's a lot of last minute stuff.
Yeah, I had to cut my my 3 times daily nap in half, but no, just kidding. But yeah, it's really busy. You're right. But it's a good thing. It's exciting, you know. Speaking of which, tell people what are some hints on what you're going to be speaking about? You know, what can they look forward to?
Well, I'm talking about the killer apps for the blockchain in 2018, and basically I've put on my fortune teller garb, and I've looked at the technology, and I've looked at the markets, and I've looked at the economy and the problems that a lot of sectors are dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at the blockchain, and I've decided that I know what the killer apps are going to be for 2018.
Nice. How about to tease people? What do you think that other people think may be the killer apps that you think are not going to be the killer apps? Let's dance around the subject and drive people nuts here.
Well, I do think that that a lot of people, if I were to talk to some project, I believe that a lot of them believe private chains are going to be the killer app in the blockchain space in the coming year. And I don't actually think private chains will. They will certainly solve a lot of problems, but I don't know that they'll be the real killer app for 2018. I'm not entirely sure how much I can tell you about what I think is not going to be a killer app without giving away the farm. But let me, from my talk, but let me say that the real message about the blockchain is to understand what it does and what it doesn't do. One of the things the blockchain does very well is it creates a shared immutable ledger of entries. Most usually those entries are transactions, but they don't have to be transactions. And it creates this immutable shared record of entries across multiple parties, perhaps even parties who are not particularly trusting of each other or cooperating with each other, but they cryptographically know what this ledger contains. And also, the blockchain allows you to know when something is added to the ledger. You can't modify the ledger in terms of going back and changing an entry, but you can add to it. And so as entries are added to this ledger, it acts as a messaging device that tells other parties that something has changed. And then lastly, either through addresses or other mechanisms, parties can sign entries to represent their views. So I can look on the blockchain and know that these entries were signed by these addresses, and these other entries are signed by these other addresses. And where people have demonstrated they hold those keys, I can now see a list of entries that are effectively authorized by multiple parties or by individual parties, but I can tell who's authorizing those entries. And this mechanism of allowing parties to contribute to a shared ledger of known entries from them or authorized entries from them, and interspacing those with entries that are authorized by other parties, you're creating the means of cooperation between different agencies within an organization, or different organizations, or between individuals and organizations, the government, companies. All of these parties can now walk a process through with each party authorizing the next step, and all of this being auditable. So the killer apps are going to be the ones that leverage the immutable chain, the messaging component, and the authority component. And these are the things that the blockchain brings that just are not available through other technologies. At least they're available, but they're not available in a trustless technology.
Are you seeing that people want to try to find a use for blockchain for anything? And what are some of the maybe misconceptions people have about what blockchain can do or is good for that it's probably not usable or good for?
Oh, well, I mean, that was pretty easy. Almost everyone, well, I say it's easy, and I'll say almost everyone, but what I really mean to say is the most frequent misconception about the blockchain is that it somehow replaces a database. It doesn't replace the database. The blockchain itself is a very inefficient data structure to use directly. So what you have to do to use the blockchain is take the cryptographic proofs from the blockchain and index them into a database so that you can find information quickly and correlate information that may be present in different parts of the database. So blockchains do not replace databases. What blockchains do is undergird databases with cryptographic proofs of the data that the databases hold. Okay. And so that's a big misconception about the blockchain. So everyone out there that thinks that they're going to use the blockchain to get rid of databases, no. You're going to always have a database sitting on top of the blockchain. Now, the difference is today you'll have a database, and the only reason you trust it is you've controlled access to it or controlled who could write to it and that sort of thing. And in the future, that won't be a concern. The concern will be whether the cryptographic proofs validate. As long as the data you pull from the database validates cryptographically against the blockchain, you're golden, and you can trust that that data is at least what it was at the time it was written to the blockchain, or at least at the time the proof was constructed in the blockchain for that data. So, so that's a rather critical misconception about the blockchain.
Okay.
The other thing that I think that people think the blockchain will do is somehow prove that data is correct. Like there have been a few memes that say that the blockchain will stop fake news. And that's not really true either, because the blockchain can't do anything but validate that data is what it was at the time it was written to the blockchain. And, you can use it to validate transactions, but the thing about transactions is all the data to validate a transaction is already in the blockchain. So you're proving that the next transaction is consistent with all the other transactions that were in the blockchain. I can do that, but I can't use the blockchain to validate something that's outside the blockchain. So using the blockchain to validate that Trump, in fact, is one of the strangest presidents we've ever had, well, that may be true, but you can't use a blockchain to prove it or disprove it.
Right. What's any negative or dystopian uses of blockchain you see that are a possibility that you hope will never happen, or do you think it's really not going to play out that way at all?
I don't really believe that it will play out that way. I do think that the blockchain can be used in a way that aids anybody to do anything. So if there's a party out there that wants to create a better bomb, for example, then blockchains can be used to create greater efficiencies in the development and research and testing and deliver to the world yet a bigger, better bomb. And for some of us, that's a bad thing. So the blockchain can't avoid that. But the blockchain can, in that process, create a trail, an audit trail that allows us to hold people responsible for having constructed the bomb and prevent people from escaping responsibility for their actions in the future. And I believe that the ability to audit what people do and audit the business processes is what's going to keep the blockchain from being a negative power influence in the world. I think it will serve as a moral and ethical break on behavior that people would otherwise perhaps engage in, knowing that should this turn out badly, they won't be fingered as being the responsible parties.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think it's mostly positive. I mean, it could be negative, but I think it's mostly positive.
Well, that's great. Any projects that are just coming out or being considered that you're excited about that aren't necessarily killer applications, but you think will be a great, addition to the portfolio of what blockchain can do?
Oh, I believe that ID 2020 is a very interesting project. This is a project that IBM, Oracle, and apparently, I believe, the Rockefellers or the Rockefeller Institute or something like that, are cooperating with to create identities for people that are otherwise disadvantaged and without identity. This to address human trafficking, to address migration and refugee problems and issues, and help prevent the exploitation of people worldwide. I think this is a great project, and I think that's amazing. I also believe that the DeSoto project is an amazing project. Hernando de Soto wrote The Mystery of Capital and explored why the West has been able to be so successful in utilizing its resources to create wealth and prosperity for its people, while a lot of countries that have lots of resources and wealth have had a harder time doing that. Like South America and Africa in particular. And the really amazing facts is something that I didn't really realize. Hernando de Soto is a native of Peru, and he was able to use the ability to document property rights to take away the support of one of the most infamous terrorist groups in the Americas, the Shining Path. And what he discovered was that the Shining Path was giving people documents that documented their property and gave them assurances of property rights. And so he went into the same areas, did the same sort of documentation, and provided the government a means of asserting that they would respect property rights. And the support for the terrorist groups just disappeared, because given a choice between a terrorist group that supports your property rights and a government that doesn't, you're going to support the terrorist group. Why? Because your property rights are how you get by in this world.
Right.
But if your choice is a terrorist group or the government, now the government is a legitimate player and terrorists are obviously bad, then obviously your support can go to the government.
Huh.
And this is an amazing observation. And when you go look at the Arab Spring, the principal argument was not religion. Principal argument was property rights. And if you can bring property rights to the Middle East, you could conceivably bring peace to the Middle East, even if the governments can't figure their way, can't negotiate their way out of a wet paper bag.
Ugh.
If you can just establish property rights, you can bring peace to the Middle East. So, blockchain, there you go.
Well, Factom, from what I know, I mean, you know much better, it's going in the direction of working with real estate companies and perhaps with property rights, or is it? What are you guys doing in the real estate realm?
Well, in the real estate realm, we're largely creating cryptographic audits and cryptographic proof of the business processes behind loan origination and a lot of other foreclosure, a lot of other complicated, sometimes fraught with legal issues, processes that fall in that category, processes that are subject to quite a bit of regulation and review and audit. And so we create these cryptographic proofs that will dramatically cut the cost of these kinds of processes. And so as far as we're working with banks and those types of customers, we're concentrating on those kinds of processes. Titling is always something that comes up, but titling is a much harder problem because it involves the cooperation of so many different parties. Creating cryptographic audits that your own processes are following the rules and you've done everything that you're supposed to do, this doesn't require buy-in from any organization. So this is what we've been focusing on. Okay,
very interesting. Last couple questions, since I'm asking you all the stuff at the fringes, blockchain and artificial intelligence, blockchain and quantum computing, hacking and computer security. How do you see blockchain addressing, maybe these three niches or areas, or do you see an interaction coming between any of these areas and blockchains?
Well, I have a harder time understanding some of the AI implications of the blockchain. I can see that being able to track the data and be able to have better oracles on what's going on in the real world, at least essentially auditable and verifiable, maybe through attribution. Having good oracles that tell you what's going on in the real world can enhance AI. Being able to create audited and secure data streams from IoT devices are going to underpin AI, where AI is doing a better job of responding to emergencies, natural disasters, traffic control, pollution control, these kinds of things. The blockchain can be enormously helpful on actually creating the AI. I think that a bit outside of the blockchain realm, but no AI is worth any more than the data that it acts upon. So creating the data integrity layer behind the information that AI uses and leverages is going to be critical.
Okay.
What were your other topics? I'm sorry, I drilled so hard on AI, I kind of forgot.
No, there's too many of them at once. The other one was quantum computing. How's that going to affect cryptography?
Well, quantum computing will absolutely affect the elliptical curve cryptography that we use for our signatures. However, the quantum computing will only provide computing enhancements at a percentage increase basis. So a lot of people are under the impression that when we have quantum computers, suddenly we'll be able to compute anything and just break these signatures and everything will be, up into the air and, fear and terror. In reality, quantum computing will only be able to do a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more. So as quantum computing knocks off digits from the security, right now, largely we use 256-bit signatures inside of Bitcoin and most chains, it'll effectively knock off a bit or a byte or so of the security, but that'll still leave you with hundreds of bits of security on your signature. As we get closer to compromise, we'll be able to just double the signature space to 512 bits and be back to a secure place. I just don't see the odds of a massive breakthrough that suddenly just absolutely breaks signatures. I don't see the odds of that being very high. I think whatever happens, we'll see it coming, and we'll be able to modify our code to prevent it. Now, the other thing is that there isn't any theory that I've read that suggests that quantum computing will unravel hashes. Hashes are a different kind of function that require many steps, and they're just the idea that quantum computing would be able to reverse hashes or be able to create solutions for hashes so that we can engineer collisions in the hash space. I think that is incredibly unlikely. So I don't believe that quantum computing is quite the danger that a lot of people think it is.
Okay, that's good to know. Last question: what about hacking? It seems funny with all the cryptography and all the security and the immutability that hacks are just, I don't know, it seems like they're just on the rise and they're in the news constantly. What do you think? How do you think blockchains are going to, collide with hacking? What's going to happen?
Well, keep in mind that the vast majority of hacking done that results in loss is against the traditional financial and banking system. We are able to hack into ATMs. We're able to counterfeit money. We're able to mug people on the street. We're able to rob banks. Inside of Bitcoin, if I consider the bank the blockchain, there is no way to rob the bank in the Bitcoin space because you can't break the signatures and the hashes that are inside of the Bitcoin blockchain. That there just is no evidence whatsoever that anybody can do that. And I can point to addresses that hold hundreds of millions of dollars of value. They've been sitting there for years and nobody can break them. So the math is pretty solid at that point, but you can hack into somebody's wallet. Now that's akin to mugging on the street. And so we need better controls and better infrastructure to safeguard our funds and safeguard our persons. I believe that there's been a rise of attacks on particular people because they're seen as Bitcoin wealthy or something.
Right.
And this is a growing concern. I was told by one person that people who are worth billions of dollars spend almost nothing on security because, one, people don't know they have the money, and two, even if you know they have the money, you know they have it tied up in stocks and real estate and stuff like that. It's not like they can just give you $1 billion.
Right.
But somebody holding $1 billion in Bitcoin wealth conceivably could sit down at a computer and irreversibly transfer who knows how much wealth to you. And so there's a lot of concerns with that. And what we need are security and mechanisms that make it well known and well understood that even the crypto wealthy really can't access their funds just like that. It takes an enormous amount of effort and struggles, and it's not necessarily something that can be done to transfer that kind of wealth. Again, keep in mind, even the traditionally wealthy are somewhat in danger of people who would demand them to take their wealth and buy cryptocurrency and use that currency to pay for some sort of, in response to some sort of extortion of some kind.
Right.
And so this is a problem in the crypto space. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is a problem, and it is something that we'll have to deal with. But I think with better auditing tools that maintain privacy unless there is a real issue, and auditable ways of doing investigations to ensure that powers are not abused when they investigate these kinds of things, we can create systems that safeguard our people better, even better than you can in the traditional banking and financial sector.
Yeah, that was the what it was leading into. What's going to be happening in the arms race between privacy and blockchain explorers and discovering who holds what and who's transferring what? Where do you think that's going to go over the next year or two?
Well, I believe that there's a lot of technologies that will secure the privacy of our holdings and our wealth, and I think that this will it's really going to encourage our governments to look at consumption taxes and other points of audit that allow them to collect these taxes without because in the end this boils down to tax collecting. The government tries to justify this with terrorism and child porn and the children, but in reality the problem is taxes. They want to make sure they get their tax money. There are ways to require people to pay taxes if they want to enjoy the fruit of owning a lot of stuff, of being wealthy, and those are the appropriate places to tax. And they can, through tax reform, create systems that are fair, easier to manage, that don't penalize people for working hard, don't penalize people for saving, don't penalize people for being financially responsible. Right now, we've kind of set up a system that rewards the debt, rewards borrowing, and penalizes people for trying to save and trying to work, gather up resources to achieve their goals on their own. I think cryptocurrency is going to do a lot to fix that. So, yeah, I think the whole privacy war is going to settle out into a compromise where we do have to admit that people have a bit more privacy than we've been allowing them.
Oh, very good. I like to ask you every question I can, no matter how deep or how philosophical, because I just assume you'll have great answers. And you do, so thank you.
Not a problem. Well, this is why the people want to hear what the killer apps of 2018 are, because it's going to set the frame of your mind to see what to expect. Yeah. Well, very good. All right, Paul. So, what's the best way if people want to find out more about Factom, or they want to, ask you questions if you're open to that? What's the best way for them to get in touch? Well, there is the Factom Foundation Slack. And you can join that Slack and learn all kinds of things about Factom. We have a Factom Reddit where you can find the link to join the Factom Slack. Can't just quote it off the top of my head, but it's available there. Sure. On the Reddit. You can go to Factom.com and read about Factom itself. And there are a bunch of websites around Factom, so certainly Googling Factom will give you a wealth of other resources and other websites that are using Factom for various reasons and addressing various use cases. All right, well, very good. Well, Paul, thanks for coming, and looking forward to seeing you in a few days at the conference, and always good to talk to you. Okay, well, and Richard, I hope you're looking forward to 2 weeks from now when you finally get to sleep. Yeah, definitely. No, stuff's going well. I got a big staff of people that are helping, and but yeah, it's still at the end. It turns into absolute craziness. Everyone, I feel like I have 1,500 children, and they're all asking for stuff, and they're all saying, "Please, So. Yeah, absolutely. But it's all good. Have fun. Okay, Paul. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. All right, bye. Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012.
Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first. In their covered wagons, they find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you. You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.